Mm, okay, guys. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Let me see. We were okay. Okay, guys. So yesterday we started with the writing section, and we said that there were two questions that you were gonna have in the writing section, right? The first one was the integrated, which is the one we started with yesterday. This is the integrated writing, right? You have to first read an article, then listen to a lecture, and then summarize everything in 20 minutes. Now we were doing an example, our first example, and it was about these driverless cars, right? Do you guys remember what it was about? Yeah, right, great. So it was about driverless cars. It was an argumentative article. We said there were three types, right? This was the argumentative type. So the writer of this article has an opinion. The writer thinks that these driverless cars will have a positive impact on the driving experience and gives three reasons, right? Because they're safer, they're good for the environment, and they'll give us time. And the professor, we listened to the lecture, and the professor had also an opinion, which is always going to be the opposite of the writers. So the professor says the opposite. The professor says, well, they won't have a positive impact, they have some problems, and gives three reasons as well. They're not safer, they will, like long term, pollute even more because there will be more cars, and we're just going to waste that time, right? Any questions before we start? Okay, great. So let's see. Okay, guys. Now we're gonna go to the template. This is the template we have for this task. But I'm gonna give you some tips on how to remember the template later. Okay? For now, let's just focus on what we have. Let's just do with this template. Now, what we're gonna do is, first of all, we have 4 paragraphs in the essay. Okay? You guys only need to have 4 paragraphs to have a good score. You don't need more than that. What you need, the most basic thing, the most basic essay that you can do and still get a good score is 4 paragraphs. The first one will be your introduction and the rest will be the body of your essay. Conclusion, you can do it only at the end. Once everything else is great and you are happy about it, you can do the conclusion. Okay? But let's start. In the introduction, our first paragraph, the basic things that you have to have, the two basic things you need to have. The first one, you need to have the article's main point. In this case, since it's an argumentative essay, the main point is the writer's opinion, right? We're gonna write that down. And second thing you need to have is the lecture's main point, which in this case, since it's an argumentative lecture, is the professor's opinion. That's it. That's all you need to have in your introduction. One more thing that you need to have, but this is additional and it isn't really a sentence, is some transitional phrases. Okay? Now, one very common mistake that people make, I was telling you about one yesterday. I was saying some students think this is a creative essay and they try to have an interesting and fun introduction and they get that, right? They have a perfect introduction that's super nice and super like interesting and fun. But then everything else, like sometimes they even run out of time and they have like 2 paragraphs. That's not your goal, right? Your goal is to have the most basic thing, but well written. That is your goal. So another mistake people make here is summarizing the body. You know, sometimes we know, because like that's the way we've been taught, that in the introductions, we really have to summarize everything we're gonna say, right? That is something that we usually tend to do. Maybe that's the case, but in this specific essay, you don't have to do that. So please, in the introduction, you should not summarize the body. So you shouldn't be talking about the reasons in the introduction, in other words. So your introduction should only be about, could be the topic and the opinions, the main opinions. But please don't include anything about the reasons in your introduction. Because one, you don't have that much time. Two, it's easier to be repetitive. Remember that this isn't such a long essay, right? It's gonna be about 250 words. That should be the ideal word count. Could be more, it could be less, right? But it's not a lot. So it's easy to sound repetitive if you summarize the reasons. And you're gonna have to repeat the same words. You're gonna have to use the word safe, environment, and time. So you don't really want to repeat too much. So it's better not to summarize the reasons in the beginning, in the introduction. Okay? Any questions about that so far? No? Okay, so then let's get to it. First sentence, we have the article's main point. We're gonna highlight it on, yeah. So we're gonna say, the reading extract, which is the article, claims, which means says, and now we're gonna go back to the article, which you have on your screen, and we're gonna look for the main opinion, right, of the article. That in this case is that driverless cars will have a positive impact on our driving experience. Technically speaking, you could copy and paste. You could say, the reading extract claims that driverless cars will have a positive impact on our driving experience. You could do that, but that isn't convenient for you. You need to show your vocabulary. So what you're gonna do instead is paraphrase. So you're gonna say the same, exactly the same, without changing the idea, but you're gonna use different words or you're gonna rearrange the sentence. So what can we say to say this, but in different words? The reading extract claims, what can we say? The reading extract claims that, any ideas?
The written extract claims that words are have a positive um, positive positive impact.
Okay, Wendy, I didn't hear you quite well. So you said the reading extract claims that driverless cars have.
Yes, a positive impact. Mhm.
Okay. Now, another tip I can give you, one very important thing, and this goes for grammar. Careful with, in terms of grammar, like zooming in the grammar part, another mistake that students make is they're not careful with the tenses, okay? For some reason, I've seen that in the essays and in the lectures, usually they try to, it's according to your luck. For example, in this case, what tense are we seeing the most here? What tense are we seeing? Future, right? Simple future. We're saying will. They will have a positive impact. They will be safer. They will reduce traffic problems. They will give passengers time. Now, why is that? Why is it in the future tense and not in the present tense or in the past tense?
We don't use driverless cars so much nowadays. There are
Exactly.
only a few.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. So yes, we're not using driverless cars right now, right? It's something that will happen in the future. It's like a technology that is like we're seeing if we can implement it or not, right? That is the thing here. We're seeing if it will be a positive thing to have them or not. So that is the reason why we have everything, well, not everything, right? But almost everything in the simple future. Now, when you're speaking and when you're writing your essay, you need to maintain that like that structure. You need to make sure that you're being clear about the fact that this isn't something that is happening right now, but that will happen in the future. So here, it will be great if we can continue with the future tense, because right now, they don't have a positive impact. But the thing is, if we start using them more, they will have a positive impact, right? So careful there with the tenses. Sometimes, like for example, when you have those theories, they are usually for the past. They are like, okay, we wonder why dinosaurs have become extinct. Theory number one says that it could have been due to, I don't know, rocks crashing out. Theory number two says that it may have been caused because of environment changes. So everything is in the past, right? We're speculating about what could have happened in the past. So that is, you have to be careful and you have to continue using past tense. And in this case, it's the opposite, right? It is future. So careful there. So great. The reading extra claims that driverless cars will have a positive impact and provides three arguments of support. Now, this provides three arguments of support is the transitional phrase. Okay, I'm just saying that the reading gives some reasons, but without mentioning or describing what those are, right? Any questions about this first sentence? Okay, great. Now the second one. After you're done with the writer's opinion, you go to the professor's opinion and you say, however, which means, but the professor argues or says that. So what did the professor say about this? Look at your notes. What can we say?
That they will bring some problems with driving experience.
Exactly. So we're gonna say, however, the professor argues that they will bring some problems for driving experience. Objecting each of the author's arguments, right? Because the professor basically responds or objects to each one of the professor's points. So is this okay now? Any questions? Okay, guys. Now, before we move on to the body, I want to say something. Now, this introduction is basically everything you need to have. All right, that's everything you need to have a good score. But if you want to make it better, at the end of the entire essay, that means after you're done, right? I mean, after you have written everything, you have completed the 4 paragraphs and you're okay with the grammar, with the spelling, with punctuation, with vocabulary, with everything. If you have extra time, in case you have extra time, you can go back to the introduction and add one more sentence here before sentence number 1. Okay? This is completely extra. It's just an additional thing. All right? Now, what is that sentence that you could add in case you had extra time at the end? Basically, give some context. All right? So that context is going to be the topic, the general topic, that was both from the reading and from the lecture. So I'm not going to include any opinions in here. I'm just going to talk about the general topic without being subjective. So what was the topic in both the lecture and the article?
Driverless cars.
Exactly. It was about autonomous cars. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to say something like this. We could say both the article and lecture discuss, and here we talk about the topic, right? Which is autonomous cars. Now, you can leave it there and it's fine. You're giving some context, but it'd be great if you have some explanation. And you usually do. In the introductions of the articles, you will always have something else. So you will always have an explanation of the topic. In this case, we have a definition, right? Or we have like an explanation of how this technology works. So we say the technology works like this. So we're gonna use that. We're gonna include this sentence in our essay, right? Just to give some context as to what these cars are. We're gonna imagine that somebody is reading this essay without knowing what they are. So if I just start by saying driverless cars without explaining, then it's not as complete as it could be, right? So I'm gonna explain a little bit about these autonomous cars. Same thing here. I want you guys to paraphrase this sentence. Don't copy and paste. I could copy and paste, but I don't want to. So how can you guys say this in different words? Using sensors or computers, these cars can drive without input from a human. How can I paraphrase that sentence? Any ideas? Maybe we can say something like discuss autonomous cars, which are, or we can skip that part and just say vehicles, because I'm trying to paraphrase the word cars. Vehicles that don't require a human driver, that do not. Yes. Something like that. Okay? Another tip while we're going, try not to use contractions. Okay, so instead of saying don't, use the full thing and say do not require. Instead of saying won't, say will not. Instead of saying shouldn't, say should not. Right? Try not to use contractions. So is that okay? This, as I was telling you, this sentence is completely optional because a lot of students like waste time thinking about how to have this context. You don't do that. You just finish your essay, and if you have extra time, then you can add this context sentence. Okay? Any questions about this sentence? So now we have our introduction, it's done, and it's okay. It's actually good, right? It's everything we have to have. I'm gonna move this somewhere else. See? Okay. Okay, guys, so that is the introduction. Now we have to move on to the body of the essay. Now, in the body paragraphs, in each body paragraphs, because we have 3, we're gonna do exactly the same thing. In each body paragraphs, the structure will be the same. So we're just gonna do one of them to illustrate. Now, in the body paragraphs, you need to have 3 sentences, or at least 3 sentences. Of course, you can have more, but at least you should have 3 sentences. Sentence number 1 would be reason number 1 from the reading. Okay? Or point number 1 from the reading. That would be sentence number 1. Sentence number 2 has to be reason 1 from the lecture. And sentence number 3 has to be explaining reason 1 from the lecture. So it has to be like a development of reason number 1 from the lecture. That is what you need to have. At least 3 sentences having those things. But careful, these body paragraphs need to be at least 4, or it could be more, lines long. Right? So if you have short sentences, you're not gonna get to the 4 lines. So that's gonna kind of force you to have a little bit more complex sentences. Okay, we're gonna see with an example. So sentence number 1, right? We say we need a reason from the reading. The first reason from the reading. Now, what was the first reason from the reading? we can go back to the reading, review what we did. So this was the reason, right? That vehicles or self-driving cars are safer or will be safe. Same thing, try to paraphrase it a little bit. I know that the word safe will be hard to paraphrase because it's a keyword. But how would you guys say it? How can you say that? So the article starts by stating that. So how do we say that these cars are safer or will be safer? The article starts by stating that. What can we say? Wendy, what would you say? What would you write?
Maybe we can say that the article starts by stating that these cars will protect us from damages.
I'm sorry, Wendy, I couldn't. It's like you're cutting off a bit. These cars will?
Or will protect mm, will cause damage.
I'm sorry, Wendy, I really cannot hear you. These cars will? Come again, please.
Protect us.
With us, okay.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, good. All right. Honestly, even though I'm telling you to paraphrase, you kind of have to still mention the keywords, right? So it would be good if you can mention safety or something related to safety. So maybe we can say these cars will protect us from accidents or reduce accidents, and thus being safer than normal cars, right? Something like that. Yes, maybe protect us from accidents, being safer than usual cars. Okay, something like that. That word is really hard to paraphrase because it's the key word, right? Safety. There's not really another way to say that. So something like that could be. Is it okay? Any questions about this first sentence? The reason number one from the reading? Okay. Now, believe me, don't make the mistake of explaining more. Please, you just need one reason from the reading. You don't need more than that. You just need one sentence for the reading. If you have more than one sentence, it's just a waste of time. Because remember, the question asks you more about the listening. One sentence is more than enough for the reading. Now, sentence number two, it should be reason number one from the lecture. So what did the professor say about this? We have our notes. You can also look at yours. We have one car hit another one, designed by humans, prone to error, not safer. So how can we put this together? What would you write, Laura? Nevertheless, in the presentation, it is noted that
Since driverless cars are designed by humans, they are more it is more probable to have errors, so they are not safe. Therefore, they are not safe.
great. Great, I really like it. I like the fact that you were saying so, and then you change it for there. And that's the way that you should think. So you need to use this, remember we said, right, in the criteria we had, connectors was part of it. So using these connectors and trying to use the more complex one instead of like the quickest one is always better. So great, it is probable to have errors, therefore they're not safe. Great. Now that's it, right? That is this sentence, the one in blue. Now, have we met the requirement of having 4 or more lines long? We haven't met that requirement yet, right? We're still in 3 lines. So what do we do to, okay, we have one more sentence. Sorry. We still need to write one more sentence. Okay, so we still need to explain this a little bit more. What other sentence can we have? What else? I think we had an example, right? In this case, we had an example about one car that hit another. So that is what we can do. Now, another tip I can give you here for the body paragraphs, when you're connecting sentence 2 with sentence 3, make sure that you have a linking word. Okay? So it depends. I'm not gonna tell you which one you have to use because it depends on what your next sentence will be. So if it's an example, you need to use a linking word for examples, right? So you could use for example, for instance, to illustrate, exemplifying. If it's a fact, you can say in fact, as a matter of fact, certainly. If it's a, like, I don't know, if it's a result, then you can say as a result, thus, right? So depending on what you have, you should use a linking word. In this case, we have an example. So we're gonna say, for example, for instance, whatever, it's fine. Remember punctuation after every linking word or transition word, you always have a comma, right? So for example, now, what can we say? How can we talk about that example we had of that car that hit another car? Wendy, what would you say? How can you summarize?
For example, you mentioned that days ago, news a car hit another car.
Years
When,
ago, sorry?
yeah, you mentioned that years ago on the news, a driver hit another.
Okay. Is that it?
I don't remember what else he said.
I think this was it, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was it. I think, if I'm not wrong, that this example, this car that hit another car was actually the same that the writer mentioned here, right? Because the writer also mentions an example. The writer says, there was this self-driving car that has driven for over 700,000 miles without an accident. So it was the same car that hit another, according to the professor. So maybe to be more specific, we can say he mentions that years ago on the news, the driverless car that the writer mentioned in the article hit another car, right? Something like that, to be more specific. Driverless car mentioned in the article hit another car. Okay. All right, and that'll be it. Now we have our 4 lines long. Now the reason why we have this is because here we have a compound sentence. So this sentence here is a compound sentence. Why? Because it has 2 ideas, right? If you see it, we have 2 verbs. So cars are designed by humans, and it's more probable to have errors. We have 2 ideas. So it is a compound sentence. So this, if you didn't have a compound sentence, like if you just had one idea, let's say this, so driverless cars are designed by humans, you wouldn't have the 4 lines, right? So you kind of need to have at least one compound sentence. Now, if you don't know what a compound sentence is, There are many types of compound sentences. Okay, for example, conditionals are compound sentences because they have two ideas, right? Like if I drive, then I have an accident. So I have two verbs, two ideas. One, I drive, second, I have an accident. Those are basically compound sentences. You need to have at least one so that you can get to the four lines. Okay? And this rule will get you there, right? Will get you to have your four lines. Any questions then about this body paragraph we just did? Any questions? Oh, okay, guys. Now this structure that we just used is gonna be the same structure for all of the body paragraphs. So this second body paragraph will be exactly the same. You will have one reason from the reading and two sentences to explain the reason that was given in the lecture. Same thing, but with different words, right? You have other other transition words, other reporting verbs, and so forth. And same will happen for the last one. You will still have one sentence for the reading and two for the listening. Okay? Is that okay so far? Any questions about the structure, about what we did? We're gonna move this somewhere else. Okay, so basically just to give you an idea, it will be something like this, right? Furthermore, the author also points out that such cars will benefit the environment. On the other hand, the professor explains that although they may drive more efficiently, they, I don't know, the direct cause or the direct result of implementing these cars will be more people will be encouraged to drive, which means more cars will be on the road. As a result, pollution levels could actually increase, right? So that will be your second paragraph. And then you have your third paragraph explaining the third point, which was about time, right? Finally, the author mentions another benefit of driverless cars is that they will provide passengers with time. Still, the lecturer maintains that even if we will have this extra time, as we won't have to drive anymore, we are more likely to waste this time. Actually, the professor explains that some people like to drive and whatever and enjoy this time. So that's how it will be, right? I have one sentence for the reading and two for the listening. I try to have at least one compound sentence per body paragraph so that I make my four lines. Any questions so far? Good. Now, I'm gonna give you guys some tips on how to make this better. So we're gonna go back to the criteria, right? Remember that one thing that they evaluate your response based on was language use, right? And that has to do with grammar and vocabulary. Now, first, to improve vocabulary, the quickest thing you can do, especially if you're taking the test soon, is to study and memorize a couple of adjectives and adverbs. Okay, so maybe we can do it in another slide. Here. Okay, so in terms of vocabulary, no. In terms of vocabulary, the quickest thing to do to improve vocabulary, as I was telling you, is to work on adjectives and adverbs. So do you guys know what an adjective is? What is an adjective? Any ideas?
A word that describes something.
Exactly, that's perfect. An adjective is basically a word that describes another thing. It could be an idea, it could be a person, an animal, a group of people, like something in the air as well. So for example, if you think about it, the word positive is an adjective, right? And we are repeating the same as we had here. We're saying they will have a positive impact, they will have a positive impact. We're basically saying the same when we're supposed to be paraphrasing. So the better way to do that is by changing the adjective, right? Instead of saying will have a positive impact, we can say they will be beneficial, right? Beneficial is an adjective. Or we could say they will be favorable, right? It could be favorable for people or for our society. That is also an adjective. So studying adjectives will make things easier for you. Another thing, the word safe is also an adjective, right? And there may be synonyms for the word safe. In this context, I don't know, like because secure like has a different implication, right? But it's also an adjective. So if you guys know synonyms for the most common adjectives, that will improve your vocabulary by a lot. So study some synonyms for the most basic adjectives, things like good and bad. You shouldn't be using these words, right? Things like pretty and ugly. So you look for synonyms for those words, things like important. So instead of saying important, you can say significant, you can say essential, you can say key. So look for synonyms to the most common adjectives. That is something that you're gonna find online, right? If you look for 25 most common used adjectives, and then you look for a synonym for each one of them. So you're just gonna learn like 15 words, and believe me, that will really make a difference in your essay. Okay? So study adjectives. And second, study adverbs. Now, do you know what an adverb is?
A word that describes an action.
Exactly. So in this case, it's a word that describes or modifies a verb, right? Or an action. So adverbs are good because they make you sound fancier in a way, but they also make your ideas stronger. And this goes for both this essay and the independent essay. So, for example, let's say here, right? We're saying since driverless cars are designed by humans, it is more probable to have errors, therefore they are not safe. If we want to make this idea even stronger, we could say they are definitely not safe, right? That word definitely is an adverb. Usually those adverbs are the words that end in ly, right? So it's like definitely, certainly, totally, I don't know, absolutely, unfortunately, luckily, sadly, happily. So those are adverbs. So they make your ideas even stronger, right? It's like when you say, I'm married, that's one thing. If you say, I'm happily married, it's another thing. You're making it stronger. If you say, I'm totally, completely, happily married, then it's even stronger than it was. So use those adverbs, memorize a few of them and try to implement them in your response. For example, here, the driverless car mentioned in the article, I don't know, in reality, it's also an adverb, hit another car, or actually hit another car, right? In fact, hit another car. So we can use those words to make our ideas even stronger. Here too, right? We can say they will truly bring some problems, or they will unfortunately, we could say, right? Bring some problems onto our driving experience. So I'm making my ideas strong, So memorize a couple of them, try to use them, and they will also increase greatly your vocabulary. Okay, guys? Any questions about that? Remember, try to, if we had time, I would very happily like give you a few, right? And try to see how to use them as well. But we don't have that much time, so try to check out some adverbs and adjectives online. Okay, guys? Is that okay? Any questions about that? Nope. Or we could use they will sadly bring some problems, I don't know. Or they will undeniably bring some problems. So those are adverbs. So that is in terms of vocabulary. Okay? Now, in terms of grammar, some tips I can give you. First, use different structures, and that is A grammar tip is the one that I was telling you that you have to have 4 lines, because one of your sentence is gonna have to be a compound sentence, and that goes for grammar. When you change structures, that's grammar. One easy, quick tip that I can give you is using a conditional. At least one conditional in the essay. Do you guys know what a conditional sentence is? Do you know what it is? A conditional sentence is one that is referring to a condition, right? As it looks like. So, for example, if I say, if I win the lottery, I will buy myself a car. Okay, this is a conditional sentence. Why? Because it has two different clauses. It has the condition clause. So the condition for everything is that I win the lottery, right? So in case this condition is met, in case this happens, the condition is met, then what will happen? The result clause. The result of this condition being met will be buying myself a car. If I win the lottery, I will buy myself a car. So conditional sentences, not always, but usually have this if word, okay, with the condition. But there are other ways to do this as well. You know, if I want to make it even more complex or fancy, I could say, instead of if I win the lottery, I will say, should I win the lottery? Did you know this structure? Have you ever heard of it? So it's another way to say the same. You guys know the word if, right? If I win the lottery, I will buy myself a car. Pretty sure you know that. But you can replace that structure with the word should. Should I win the lottery? Right? I'm gonna maybe search for first, let's say should in conditional. Right? So it's a conditional. The conditional should. So I don't know. Okay, so maybe you can check one of these websites, okay? But that is like an extra thing, you know, you don't need to do that replacement because it's an inversion that you do. Should I win instead of if I win, right? It's an inversion. But you don't have to do that. I'm kind of going off topic. The thing is, try to use a conditional sentence. Now, there are many types of conditionals. This one here is the first condition, okay? You have the zero conditional, you have the first, you have the second, the third. So a second conditional would be, if I won the lottery, I would buy myself a car. So the second conditional shows more grammar knowledge than the first. And the third conditional is even better, right? But you won't be able to use it here. You would use it in other types of articles, right? When you speculate about the past, you could use that. Like, if I had won the lottery, I would have bought myself a car, right? So that is the first, second, and third conditional. You still have the zero condition. Now the thing is, use one conditional. So for example, here, instead of saying here, right, I could force myself to use a conditional. And I could say, the professor argues that, let's say, if this technology were implemented, it will unfortunately bring some problems onto our driving experience, right? So in this sentence, if this technology were implemented, I'm using the second condition, okay? Of course, I can do it not like it would, it will have to be it would, okay? If this technology were implemented, or I could even say were to be implemented, it would unfortunately bring some problems into our driving experience. So by having this conditional sentence, I'm showing more grammar, right? I'm showing that I know how to use this second condition. So that would be a really good tip for grammar. Use at least one conditional sentence. sentences, okay? Try to put it in there when you have extra time. Everything I'm telling you guys, by the way, is once you're done writing the basic essay that you have to have, right? When you're writing in the beginning, you shouldn't be worrying about these things. At the end, if you have extra time, then you can come back and add a conditional sentence, okay? But that will really like level up your essay a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be this second conditional, but it could be the first, right? If this technology is implemented, it will unfortunately bring some problems. No problem. But try to use at least one conditional sentence. And not like a quick way to improve grammar. What else? What was I gonna say? Try to, if you have the chance, use different tenses. So for example, we're using will a lot. Just because in the reading we have will a lot doesn't mean that you have to repeat the same will. You could say would, you could say is going to, right? Or I don't know. There are more ways to say to use the future as well. But you can do those changes. Okay, guys? Any questions about that grammar tip? No? So that is in terms of language use. In terms of connections, the only thing I could tell you is make sure that you use transition words, and you will if you follow the template, right? You have words like far, furthermore, finally, that's fine. You're okay with the template. You don't have to memorize the template because it's long. What you can do is just learn a few reporting verbs. So we have some here. Just choose 5 that you like the most, that you are familiar with, that you think you can remember, and memorize those 5. So you could say maybe, I don't know, explain. That's an easy one. You can say, I don't know, state. That's also an easy one, right? Or uh, let's say claim. I don't know. So choose a few reporting verbs, memorize them, choose a few ways to refer to the reading and the listening. So let's say memorize the word article, writer, and author. And that's it. That's everything you need. And memorize the word professor, the word lecture, and maybe lecturer. And that's it. And with those words, you can create your own template. Even when you're on the test, you can start your own template there. Okay, guys? So that will be a tip for like memorizing the template, which is, I know, a little bit long. So that would be it, I think. What else? What else can I say? Remember, I already gave you tips for time management, right? Just make sure that you have your essay. Write it down, type as fast as, well, not fast, right? But continuously without interrupting yourself, without correcting yourself, just type, and at the end you come back and review. One more tip for grammar, and this is something that many people underestimate. Check punctuation rules. That really matters. And I know that especially when we learn a language, we tend to focus more on like speaking than we do on writing. So we forget punctuation rules, and sometimes they're different than our native language, right? Like, luckily for us, punctuation rules are pretty much the same in Spanish and English. But make sure that you check some punctuation rules, just how to use commas, how to use semicolons, how to use periods, parentheses, and that's all you need. Any questions then about everything we just said? No questions? One question that I get asked a lot is the word count. Do they have a word count or a limit? Not really. There's not like word requirement or limit for you to write. You can write as much as you want. My advice would be don't count the words. Honestly, I don't think this really matters. As long as you have your 4 paragraphs and each paragraph is at least 4 lines long, then you're gonna make the 200 to 250 words that you need. Okay, so don't worry too much about the word count. don't count the words that you're writing. You won't have the option of like counting down the words, but you don't need to do that. Okay, it doesn't really matter how many words you write. What matters the most is the quality of the words you're writing. What else? Don't quote. Okay, don't use quotation marks and be like, using like quotes and references. Don't do that. You have to write your own essay without using any quotation marks or quoting anything from the reading or lecture. You don't have to be like, the professor like textually said this in quotation marks and the professor's words. Just use your original language. Any questions then before we go? I'm gonna send you this presentation. We still have one more class to work on this. And we're gonna do the other, I'm gonna just briefly explain how the other types work. Any questions? Okay, one thing I wanna say, guys. I'm gonna give you an assignment. You're gonna have to write an essay. Of course, it's not mandatory, but it will really help you if you wanna receive some feedback, if you wanna see how you're doing and also to practice, because it's an entirely different thing to write on your own. So I'm gonna send you guys to our group chat the instructions. I already have the document prepared. It's an essay that you have to write. You have the reading part and you have the listening. You have a link to the listening. And you have to write your essay using only 20 minutes, okay? Please just write your essay during those 20 minutes. Don't use up more time. I will send you the instructions through the group chat because you have to send to a specific mail that I will give you. And you have to do so until Wednesday. We won't be having class on Tuesday because of the holidays. So you need to be sending your essay by Tuesday, well, no, Wednesday morning, so that I can check them and we can work on them on Wednesday's class. Okay, guys? I will give you the instructions through the group, but I'm just like giving you a heads up on what you guys have to do. Is that okay? Any questions about that? All right. Then please, before you go, don't forget today's daily survey. I've just started it. Okay, guys. And thank you so much. Stay tuned to the group chat. I'll send instructions there and have a great weekend.
Okay, bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Sorry, I had a question. I programmed my speaking lessons on February 20 and 21, but since it's the carnival, we wouldn't have that speaking lessons.
When is 20 and 21?
Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I don't think we're gonna be having our speaking sessions then. You will, I
Oh,
think
okay.
that you have the option to rearrange them, so maybe you can change the date
Mm-hmm. Yes, I will do.
or just book at other ones, no problem. Those one won't come.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.